Hi guys and welcome to Fandom Newbie. My name is Shruti and today I'm going to be talking about my January wrap-up. So I read about 6 books in January and some of them were just absolutely amazing and a couple were like okay. But overall, I think I've had a great start to the year, like a great reading start to the year. So without further ado, let's just jump into the books I read last month. The first book that I read was A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. Now, this is of course the 4th and last book in the Ember in the Ashes series. The Ember in the Ashes series is a young adult fantasy series and it is one of my absolute favorite series. So what this book series is about is that it's basically set in a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy world known as the Marshall Empire. Now, the Marshall Empire is ruled by a group of people known as the Marshalls who rule it with an iron fist. Now, there's a group of people called the Scholars who are the most oppressed by the Marshalls, and these scholars basically come together to have like a resistance against the Marshall Empire. Now, our two main characters, Laya and Elias, belong to these opposing factions. So Laya belongs to the Scholar resistance, whereas Elias belongs to the Marshall Empire. He's actually a soldier for the Marshall Empire. And the entire series kind of just like unfurls when the lives of these two characters kind of intertwine in a very strange but like amazing way. This series is just like so amazing because it has everything. It has a very angsty romance between the two main characters. It's filled with magic, it's filled with a lot of political intrigue, and all the characters in this book are just really well developed and they are just so unforgettable and amazing. And the 4th book in the series was not a disappointment at all. Like, it was just like the other 3. It was so amazing and it emotionally destroyed me. But I feel like the end, I mean, like the way Sabaa Tahir kind of wrapped everything up was very satisfactory and I was very happy with it. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book. I really enjoyed reading the entire series. So if you're into young adult fantasy, then definitely check out the Ember in the Ashes series. The next book that I read was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now, this is the first in a kind of like Chinese inspired fantasy series, fantasy trilogy actually. There are 3 books in this series. The first book is The Poppy War and this book was just absolutely amazing. Like, it was so good. Now, what this book is about is that our main character is Rin and she belongs to kind of like a peasant family. Like, she's a war orphan and she belongs to like a really poor, like, you know, lower economy strata family. But Rin wants to kind of like, you know, come out of her poverty. She wants to live a life away from her really abusive foster parents. So she studies really hard and she passes like this nationwide examination that all students go through, and she passes that with really good marks, and she gets to go to a very prestigious military school which is in the capital of this like empire. But while Rin is kind of like at this military school and she's training to be a soldier, there's a lot of tension that is brewing between Rin's country and their like political enemy. And of course, because of this political tension and a bunch of things that happen, war breaks out between the two enemies. And the other thing is that while Rin is training to be a soldier in like the military school, she also discovers this kind of hidden power within her that could actually be like the key to defeating the enemy. But using that power does come with a cost. So that's why Rin has to decide whether she will, you know, do whatever it takes and get that power to help defeat the enemy, or whether she would want to kind of protect herself because the cost is very high to use that power. This book, like I said, was absolutely phenomenal, but I have to say, I have to mention that this is a very adult book. The way war is described in this book is just absolutely gory and disturbing and just like it's very intense. And for anyone who is under the age of 16 or 17, I think that this book would be highly inappropriate just because of the amount of violence that is portrayed in this book. There's also a lot of depiction of self-harm and just like really messed up things which I feel do need a mature mind to read and also understand. But if you are okay with it and if you are above the age of 16 or 17, then definitely check this out because it is a very, very well written book. So after the Poppy War, which was very intense, I needed something that was a bit lighthearted and fun to kind of like get my mind off of the horrific war that was described in that book. So I picked up Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This book was a total riot. Like, it was so funny. I absolutely loved it. What this book is about is basically a bank robbery that went completely wrong and ended up in an accidental hostage situation. But the funniest thing about this book is that the bank robber is extremely incompetent, and the hostages that the bank robber takes accidentally are also absolutely idiotic. Like, all of them are bumbling idiots, but all of them are like in a stage in their life where they feel stuck. So the really heartwarming thing about this book is how this bank robbery turned hostage situation actually becomes like a moment for these human beings who are like, you know, who are emotionally destroyed in some way, how these human beings kind of come together and help solve each other's problems. And it was just so heartwarming and so funny to read, and just so relatable. Like, the things that are mentioned in this book are like actual problems, like first world problems. I mean, they're not like really serious problems, but like these are first world problems that a lot of people face, and it's all to do with our emotions and the way we handle, like, you know, relationships. And it was just so beautiful to read and just so funny. And if you're looking for something that's like really light-hearted and heartwarming, then I highly recommend this book. The next book that I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is about like an old Hollywood actress who was really famous in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. And basically she now wants to come clean about her life, and she wants to talk about, you know, her romantic relationships, especially the fact that she had 7 husbands. She wants to come clean and she wants to talk about her entire life. So she goes up to like a journalist named Monique, who is like an up-and-coming journalist. She's not someone who's very famous, and even Monique is like really surprised that this very famous Hollywood actress wants her to interview her, like wants Monique to interview her. But the interview happens, and as the interview is going on, basically we come to know all of like Evelyn Hugo's secrets. We get to know why she had 7 husbands and all of her romantic entanglements, and just like we get to know about the life of this really interesting, enigmatic, like fictional Hollywood actress. Now, what Taylor Jenkins Reid does really well is that she knows how to like write historical fiction, because she can paint the picture of like 50s Hollywood in such an amazing and such a real way that it just feels like you're transported back to that era, and she does it so well. And it was also so interesting to know how like movies were made back then, the kind of like procedures that studios took to make movies. Plus, Evelyn Hugo herself is such an interesting character, and I love how she just owns her life and she owns her faults. And even if she had to do certain things to succeed in her career, and even if she had to like make certain choices to become a famous Hollywood actress, like she owns it and she has no regrets, because she knew that she did it to get ahead, and she's okay with that. And I love how unapologetic she is about that, and it was just so refreshing to read and so powerful to read. So I absolutely love this book. If you guys haven't read Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, then definitely check them out, because she is a phenomenal author, and I cannot wait to read more of her books because she is just amazing. The next book that I read was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Now, I had read another Elizabeth Acevedo, which was The Poet X, last year, and it was one of my favorite books that I read last year, so I had to read another book by her. This book is basically about 2 like young adult girls, like they're 16 years old, I think 16 or 17 years old. One lives in New York and one lives in the Dominican Republic. And basically when a flight that is going from New York to the Dominican Republic crashes, both these girls lose someone who's very important to them. And this loss and this like flight crash is what kind of bonds them together in a very unexpected way. Now, This book, like The Poet X, is also written in like poetry format. So the story is told through a number of short poems, and again, Elizabeth Acevedo has done an amazing job of like bringing the story of these girls to life through these poems, because the poems are just absolutely beautiful. They are so powerful and so emotional, just like The Poet X, and it was an absolute treat to read. I highly recommend the audiobook for this because that's what I listen to, and again, Elizabeth Acevedo reading and reciting her poems is a lot more powerful than I think someone reading it for themselves. So check out Clap When You Land and check out the audiobook, which is on the Storytel app. And the last book that I read was This Is How You Lose the Time War by... oh, there are two authors. Hold on. This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Mohtar and Max Gladstone. Sorry. This is kind of like a novella. It's about only 200 pages, and it's about two characters who are on opposite sides of the time war. So basically, they are part of like these agencies who like, you know, they manipulate time, they do things to bring about certain events so that the future that favors that particular agency comes into being, if that makes sense. And the two of them are on opposite sides. They're on opposing agencies who are at war with each other and trying to bring about their agency's future. But what ends up happening is that these two opposing agents fall in love with each other. Now, the way that the story is told is through letters that these two characters write to each other and leave for each other in different places in time. And like their relationship and their love line kind of blossoms through these letters. This book was confusing AF. Like, firstly, time travel itself is a thing that I find very confusing, like especially when I have to read about it, or even when I'm watching it in like a TV show or a movie. Time travel is very, very confusing to me. But like, apart from just the time travel aspect of this book, the writing is just so flowery and like unnecessarily lyrical and just so like lengthy. Like I couldn't understand half the things in this book. And like, yes, the love story between the two characters was very interesting, and the way they yearn for each other and like things they say to each other are very, very poetic and very like lovely to read. But it gets old after like the first 20 pages, because that is all that is there in this book. It's just these two characters writing letter after letter after letter to each other, and it becomes very repetitive after a certain point in time. And yeah, I didn't like this book. It was very confusing. It was too flowery, and there wasn't enough substance, there wasn't enough character development, there wasn't enough world development, and it was just like bleh. Yeah. So of course, if you like lyrical writing, if you like very poetic writing, and if you love time travel and like a love story, then give this book a shot. Maybe you'll like it, and maybe you can explain to me some of the things that I didn't understand about this book. But otherwise, yeah, I didn't really like this book that much. So yeah, that was my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Also, since like January ended, like, you know, towards the end of January until now, basically I've been going through a massive reading slump where I have just not read any books in the past like 2 weeks. So please leave recommendations of really good books that can help me get out of a reading slump. If you guys have any like juicy recommendations of like thrillers or something, then let me know so that I can get out of this reading slump. And of course, do subscribe to my channel for more book related videos. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.